Enzo Anselmo Giuseppe Maria Ferrari was an Italian motor racing driver and an entrepreneur. The founder of the prestigious Scuderia Ferrari Grand Prix motor racing team and subsequently of the Ferrari automobile marque. He was a great man who thought of a car as his own child. So let's dive deep into the concatenation of series that made him who he is today. Following his family's carpentry business collapsing, Ferrari started searching for a job in the car industry. He unsuccessfully volunteered his services to Fiat in Turin, eventually settling for a job as test driver for CMN, a car manufacturing company in Milan, which rebuilt used truck bodies into small passenger cars. He was later promoted to race cars and made his competitive debut in 1919 Parma Poggio di Barsetto hill climb race, where he finished an incredible fourth in the 3-liter category. On 23rd November of the same year, he took part in the Targa Folio, but had to retire after his car's fuel tank developed a leak. In 1920, Enzo joined the racing department of Alfa Romeo as a driver. Ferrari won his first Grand Prix in 1923 in Ravenna on the Savio circuit. 1924 was by far his best season, with 3 wins including Ravenna, Polesine, and Coppi Arcebo. Deeply shocked by the death of his fellow teammate Antonio Ascari in 1925, Ferrari, by his own admissions, continued to race half-heartedly. Following the birth of his son Alfredo in 1932, Ferrari decided to retire and to focus instead on managing and developing the factory car of Alfa Romeo, eventually building up a race team of superstar drivers, including Giuseppe Campari and Tazio Nuvolari. This team was called Scuderia Ferrari. Founded in 1929 and acted as a racing division for Alfa Romeo. The team was very successful thanks to the excellent cars, for example, the Alfa Romeo P3, and to the talented drivers like Nuvolari. Ferrari retired from competitive driving, having participated in a grand 41 Grand Prix with a record of 11 wins. In this period, the prancing horse emblem began to show up on his team's cars. The emblem had been created and supported by Italian fighter plane pilot Francesco Baracca. During World War I, Baracca gave Ferrari a necklace with a prancing horse on it prior to takeoff. Baracca was shot down and killed by an Austrian airplane in 1918. In memory of his death, Ferrari used the prancing horse to create the emblem that would become the world-famous Ferrari shield. Initially displayed on Alfa Romeos, the shield was first seen on a Ferrari in 1947. Building Ferrari. Alfa Romeo agreed to partner Ferrari's racing team until 1933, when financial constraints forced them to withdraw their support. A decision subsequently retracted thanks to the intervention of Pirelli. Despite the quality of Scuderia drivers, the team struggled to compete with Auto Union and Mercedes. Although the German manufacturers dominated the era, Ferrari's team achieved a notable victory in 1935 with Tazio Navari beat Nodolf Carcio and Bernard Rossemeyer on their home turf at the German Grand Prix. In 1937, Scuderia Ferrari was dissolved and Ferrari returned to Alfa's racing team, named Alfa Corse. Alfa Romeo decided to regain full control of its racing division, retaining Ferrari as sporting director. After a disagreement with Alfa's managing director, Ugo Gobato, Ferrari left in 1939 and founded Auto Ovio Construzioni, a company supplying parts to other racing teams. Although a contract clause restricted him from designing or racing cars for years, Ferrari managed to manufacture 2 cars for the 1940 Mille Miglia, which were driven by Alberto Ascari and Lotario Rogoni. With the outbreak of World War II in 1940, Ferrari's factory was forced to undertake war production for Mussolini Fascist's government. Following Allied bombing of the factory, Ferrari relocated the Modena to Maranello. At the end of the war, Ferrari decided to start making cars bearing his name and founded Ferrari SPA in 1947. Entrepreneur Enzo Ferrari in the box of Monza circuit in 1953, beside his driver Mike Hawthorne, Enzo decided to battle the dominating Alfa Romeos and race with his own teams. The team's open-wheel debut took place in Turin in 1948, and the first win came after the 1939 in Lago di Garda. The first major victory came in Le Mans in the 1940 with a Ferrari 166mm driven by Luigi Chittini and Baron Selden of Scotland, Peter Michael Thompson. In 1950, Ferrari enrolled in the newly born Formula One World Championship and is the only team to remain continuously present since its introduction. Ferrari won its first Grand Prix with Jose Forlane Gonzalez at Silverstone in 1951. The story goes that Ferrari cried like a baby when his team finally beat the mighty Alfate 159. The first championship came in 1952 with Alberto Ascari, a task that was repeated 1 year later. In 1953, Ferrari made his only attempt at the Indianapolis 500 in order to finance his racing endeavors in Formula One as well as in other events such as the Mille Miglia and Le Mans. The company started selling sports cars. Ferrari's decision to continue racing in the Mille Miglia bought the company new victories and greatly increased the public recognition. However, increasing speeds, poor roads, and non-existing crowd protection eventually spelled disaster for both the race and Ferrari. During the 1957 Mille Miglia, near the town of Guzzilo, a 4-liter Ferrari 335S driven by Alfonso Di Portago was traveling at an astonishing 250 kilometers when it blew a tire and crashed into the side of the crowd, killing Di Portago, his co-driver, and 9 spectators, 5 of whom were children. In response, Enzo Ferrari and M. Glebert, the tire manufacturer, were charged with manslaughter in a lengthy criminal prosecution that was finally dismissed in 1961. Deeply unsatisfied with the way motorsport covered the Italian press, In 1961, Ferrari supported Bologna-based publisher Luciani Conti's decision to start a new publication, Autosprint. Ferrari himself regularly contributed to the magazine for many years. Many of Ferrari's greatest victories came at Le Mans. 9 victories, including 6 in a row, 1960 to 1965. And in Formula One during the 1950s and 1960s, the success of Juan Manuel Fangio and Mike Hawthorne, going with Phil Hill, dominated. Final years. After Jody Scheckter won the title in 1979, the team experienced a disastrous 1980 campaign. In 1981, Ferrari attempted to revive his team's fortunes by switching to turbo engines. In 1982, the second turbo-powered Ferrari, the 126C2, showed great promise. However, driver Gilles Villeneuve was killed in an accident during the last season of free practice in the German Grand Prix in Zolder in May. In August at Hockenheim, teammate Didier Pironi had his career shortcut in a violent and over-and-end flip in the misty back straight after hitting the Formula Renault driver Alain Prost. Pironi was leading the Drivers' Championship at the time. He would lose the lead as he sat out of the remaining races. The Scuderia went on to win the Constructors' Championship at the end of the season and in 1983, but the team would not see championship glory again before Ferrari's death in 1988. But the team would not see championship glory, not for long, as they come close in many occasions later in the years. The final race win for the team he saw was when Gerhard Berger and Michael Alberto scored a 1-2 finish at the final round of the 187 Austrian Grand Prix. Ferrari died on August 14, 1988 in Maranello at the age of 90. The great man whose passion like no other had passed away from kidney disease. The sad news hit the public 2 days later. However, the team still prosper and is now one of the most well-known and best teams in motorsport history.